And just one last thing real quick that I did in my video, I didn't actually end up using it, but it is kind of important, is using Spotlight to texture. So if I go over here and go to texture, import, actually I don't even have to import a texture, but let's go ahead and do it just so we can kind of say we did. I'm going to go to Painter, and I've got some textures in here. I'm going to bring in one of these eyeballs, so I'm going to go ahead and just grab this one right here. So I have a texture imported. If I select it and then click this little plus sign over here, that'll add it to Spotlight. Again, I go more in depth in Spotlight in the Intro to ZBrush courses, but I'll show you some basics here. You can click on an image, you can move it around. You can texture import more images. If you import more images, like 5 of them at a time with Spotlight on, it'll automatically add them all to Spotlight. If Spotlight's off, you'll have to import them, select them, and then add them to Spotlight, but just a little bit of FYI. So one thing I do is move it around, obviously, so click and drag. And I can also scale it up and down, and I can also, not the spotlight radius, but actually the opacity. I'm going to drop that down a little bit. That's not changing the opacity of the actual texture that I'm going to be painting. It's still just as vibrant as it was when I paint through it. It's going to pick it up 100%, but it is making it so I can kind of see my object a little bit better behind it. As well as that if you want to dumb down how much you're actually painting through, I believe that's fade. So a little bit of Spotlight basics here. If I hit Z, I'm in Spotlight painting mode. If I hit Z again, I'm in Spotlight widget mode. And if I hit Shift Z, I'm out of Spotlight mode altogether. So Z, Z, Shift Z to kind of toggle through the different Spotlight modes. So I'm in Spotlight mode now. What does that mean? Well, if I have the head selected, I have RGB selected for my brush, and it's a standard brush with RGB, and I start painting, it'll paint through, oh, it's going to look really cool. It'll paint through Spotlight right onto my creature. Now, you can actually, if I undo that, and if I turn on RGB and Z add, for instance, it'll actually sculpt and paint at the same time. So it's actually using the dark values of your Spotlight to kind of press in, and the light ones it'll sculpt through more. So you can actually, if you go to, let's go to our texture menu over here, you'll notice there's some kind of weird textures in here, like this one. You can throw this into Spotlight, and you can use, let's just do it. Grab that texture here, and then add this one to Spotlight. So we've added 2 of these to Spotlight here. So now I have a grayscale one here, and just for demonstration purposes, I'm going to go out of edit mode, Control N to clear my canvas, and I'm just going to grab a plain 3D, and I'm going to hit Shift Z to get out of Spotlight mode, drag this thing out, go ahead and make it a polymesh 3D, and our geometry, I'm just going to hit divide a couple times. So now I'm going to hit Z to bring Spotlight back. I'm going to position this thing here. And now if I hit Z again to go into Spotlight painting mode, I'm in standard brush mode. I'm going to turn RGB off, and I'm just going to do Z add. And you'll see if I hit Shift Z, I'm painting right through those gray values. So if I change my stroke to like drag rect, hit Z to bring Spotlight back, it's in widget mode, so I can kind of move it around, scale it, hit Z again, and I can just kind of drag details out. And again, that's based on my Z intensity as well. Just a little FYI. But anyways, let's go ahead and undo that. And I'll hit Z to bring Spotlight back. Now I've got 2 images in here. There's a couple organizational things you can do. If you do tile selected, it'll just tile your images. You can do unified, so they're all the same size. You can do proportional. So this one's a lot higher resolution than this one. This is probably like a 256. This is probably like a 1024. So a lot of different ways to organize. Or you can just click one and click this X and delete it out of your Spotlight, and you're good to go. So Spotlight, I would probably use this. If I open up my subtools here, I'm going to grab the eyeballs, go into solo mode, and because I'm in Spotlight widget mode, it wants me to interact with Spotlight. But once I have that set where I want, I'm going to hit Z to go into Spotlight painting mode, and I have X symmetry turned on. So if I can kind of rotate this eyeball around and kind of scale it, I'm just going to tap it so I can kind of scale it into place here. And now as I start painting, through this, I need to grab my standard brush, not drag rect, but just dots, and turn on RGB, not Z add. So I'm going to be painting that color information right on there, and then Shift Z. If I back out, you'll see it painted across the X axis. And now I have, spotlight painted eyeballs. Of course, you can bring in alligator scales if you're doing human heads. Bring in head reference and paint that right onto your head. I did that on my Eat 3D video, and if I do another human, I'll probably end up doing it again. But use spotlight painting and paint sculpting if you're so inclined to your advantage.